it's crazy how the ideology can turn you from this.
Yeah. Hi, Kyle.
Hello, sir.
Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you too, man. That was a great set last night.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
To this.
Call these people the fucking frauds they are. Well, then guess what? We're going to call them the frauds that they are.
And just because Joe Rogan didn't accept his invitation to his cult. Be right with the video. To those who don't know, Kyle Kulinsky is a left-wing political commentator. He's dating one of the hosts from Breaking Points. And in the past, as I was showing you in the video, he was getting along really well with Joe Rogan. And as of recent, I think probably since Joe Rogan endorsed Donald Trump, it seems like he has lost his damn mind. And I was watching his video, and this is why the main focus of my channel, small channel with the 3 cats that watch this video, that I'm trying to show that it is bad to become part of a cult, both from the right, both from the left. If you cannot say when Donald Trump makes a mistake and that automatically makes you a Democrat, or if you say anything positive about Donald Trump that makes you a MAGA lover, again, people have to be able to think. People have to be able to disagree. People have to be able. Nobody is full left. Nobody is full right. There's very few people that are like that, because on certain aspects of your life, maybe you're a tiny bit here on this side, or maybe you're more on this side on certain topics. Maybe you're pro-life, but you're pro marijuana legalization. There's people don't have to fit into a box. And based on the video that I saw from Kyle Kulinsky, which I'm going to show you, what I noticed, what I feel from what I get from that video is he didn't go to Joe Rogan genuinely just to have a conversation. Maybe he did, but at least the way that he's reacting, he went with the purpose of like trying to convince Joe Rogan to become part of his progressive group, of his left-wing cult. And in my opinion, that is wrong. That is wrong because you have to be able to make your position, state your points, give your data, and then if people happen to disagree, that is fine. People are not a bad person just because they disagree with you. And if you see many of the podcasts from Joe Rogan rarely gets very defensive when he's on his show. He's just trying to have a conversation. It's like you meet a random person, but you're not putting a camera on. You're not looking for a fight all the time. And Joe Rogan, he's a comedian and a UFC commentator. The main objective of his channel is not to be a super critical journalist who's gonna ask the toughest questions. That's not his job. And many people from both sides, because I have seen people also on the right talking shit about Joe, like he had to back then when he didn't endorse Donald Trump and he didn't want to interview him. At that time, I was like, who gives a damn? If he doesn't want to interview him, fine. But now that he did, this guy, after he went there multiple times, he just going at it and talking shit about him. And by the way, I'm not taking anything out of context. The clip that I showed at the very beginning, I'm going to show you the full context. That way you don't see I'm manipulating anything. He was referring to Dave Rubin, Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, and other people like that he considers them fake liberals. Because they're not really liberals. He thinks they're just people on the right. And my position has been that the left has been moving further and further left. And to many people, they have felt that the default positions that the Democrats had in 2008 are now the positions that Kamala Harris had prior of being the candidate for the 2020 campaign. And people are like, I'm like, no. Look, I don't want none of that thing. Whatever you want to do, I don't want to mess with that. And that has been I think one of the good things from the election of Donald Trump is the rejection of many of the nonsense from the far left, which I'm hoping the Democrats come back to the middle and they actually put a centrist, left-center candidate, as it should have been since the beginning. But I'm going to show you here the clip. That way you guys have the full context.
Kind of sold out for
like, what was it, a $200 million contract with Spotify or whatever it is. I would argue that's corporate media, by the way. If you're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars for a corporation, it's difficult to call yourself independent at a certain point. Like,
if you're selling steak to investors.
Yeah, right. Like, what is your view of the place that we're at? And part of why I wanted to have you on is just like, you're resisting Trump. We are. A lot of other lefty media is doing that too. But I do think like there's been capture of the independent space in a way that was not the same when you and I probably both, you before me, but started doing this kind of thing. Rogan is a great example of it, though.
Yeah, I mean, I call these people now fake independent media, because that's exactly what they are. They're fake independent media. They're not real independent media. You have people like Tim Pool. You have people like Dave Rubin. I'm sure you saw all that Tenet Media stuff where Lauren Chen had this Tenet Media company, and she took money directly from the Russian government, but she ended up giving some of that money to Dave Rubin and giving some of that money to Tim Pool. And Dave Rubin and Tim Pool, I love this, their dodge is, look, we had no idea that was coming from the Russian government. We just thought some shady billionaire gave a bunch of money to Tenet Media, and then Tenet Media gave it to us. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the problem, isn't it? I've been doing this full time since 2012. I've never once had a conversation with a billionaire. I've never once had a conversation with an advertiser. The way that we raise money for our show is Patreon, donations that happen monthly, and Substack. For Crystal Kyle and Friends, we do it on Substack. And then outside of that, I just have what I call the default ads on YouTube, where there's this giant buffer, and I have no idea what's coming in and what's going out, etc. That, I think, is a model that is defensible, because I've tried to insulate myself from any malincentives. But if you call yourself independent media and you have $100 million, $200 million contract from Spotify, or you're taking money from shady billionaires left and right, or you're going to companies that contradict your values, your open express value, I'm sorry, that is no longer, you're not just independent media because you happen to be on the internet.
This is always a fascinating point from the left, where they want to cry and pretend the victim that they don't get any of the money, they don't get any of the help. But at the same time, you preach against big business, you preach against capitalism, and there's a difference between preaching against corruption and when companies do the wrong things. Like, for example, you can appreciate the good things that Amazon has brought, and you can also criticize the things that Amazon is doing wrong. The problem is they're always criticizing successful people, or they shouldn't exist. There's many people on the left, like on the far left, that they believe there shouldn't exist any billionaire. And they're saying that these people are greedy, these people are this. And my question is, how much of the money that you worked for, that you want to keep, is being greedy? Personally, I am more of a supporter of a flat tax than having the crazy progressive taxes that they want to implement, kind of like in Europe or Germany, where you tax ridiculous percentages, or in Spain, where if you make more than 60%, 60K a year, you get taxed 52%. I'm sorry, no. I'm not gonna work half a year just to maintain the government. And people are like, yeah, but they have better transportation system than the US. They have better healthcare system. So does Switzerland. And Switzerland tax you even less than the US. So right now, he is crying that new or right-wing media is making more money, even though before they were not used to, because they were shadow banned. They were not getting the deals that they wanted to. Do you guys remember what happened to Parler? Do you guys remember how Amazon pretty much just denied them service? And I'm sorry, Jeff Bezos, he's a left-wing guy, because the Washington Post is a far-left organization. It's not a right-wing media. It's not a center one either. So the point is, you cannot complain about rich people and then complain why you don't get the funding. Either one or the other.
I mean, we were defending him, unfortunately, way too late, right? When people were already on to, I don't know, man, you're saying a little bit more right-wing things here. And we would be like, well, no, look, here's a compilation of all the times Joe Rogan said base things. He argued for universal health care. He argued for free college. He argued for higher minimum wage and this good thing. And I would show that compilation and go, see, I don't know what you guys are talking about. But guess what? When you decide I'm going to endorse Donald Trump after he lied to your face relentlessly for the entire podcast, telling brazen lies, then I'm sorry, all the charity is gone, all the sympathy is gone, and I have to come to a different conclusion now. My conclusion of you could hold these people's hands and walk them through it and talk to them like they're reasonable and work it out. It just didn't work. It just didn't work. And that's why you see a much more bold, aggressive style out of me where I'm like, fuck these people and the horse they rode in on, because if what I did before didn't work, okay, I got to try a different approach now. So if it's just...
And this is one of the things I wanted to definitely clip before I show the rest of the video, because the way that he speaks clearly shows that his intention was to convince Joe Rogan to join his cult. But now that maybe he refused, or maybe he gets along with Elon, or maybe he has seen certain things, or maybe the way that he has been mistreated by the left-wing media versus the right-wing media, that's what happens. If all you're getting from one side is talking shit about you, lying about you, saying nonsense about you, and you're getting a more favored treatment from the other side, what do you think any human being is going to do? He's surrounded by many people that are, most people that are fighters tend to lean right wing, and that's his world. Comedy, and I don't know about the comedy. Probably the comedy is more left wing, but on the UFC side, he has a mix of people, and he's fine to agree or disagree. He can be pro gun and be pro weed legalization. He can be pro social healthcare, and he can be pro Donald Trump. Again, people are individuals. We are not a fucking box. We don't have to think everything by the book to the fucking Republican Party or to the Democratic Party. You have to be able to think for yourself and be like, oh, look, I think this, and I agree with the Democrats on this. I agree with the right on that. But there's certain things that are more important to you, where you're gonna outweigh the other things that you might agree with the other side, and vote on this case for Donald Trump, which was my case. I personally don't claim that I'm a liberal. I am a libertarian. I am Ron Paul, Dave Smith, Rand Paul type of libertarian. That's how I see myself. Maybe not as far as Javier Milei, but I would say Javier Milei is one of the guys that I'll definitely like when it comes to precedents in the worldview. And I'm going to show here the rest of the part to finish with the video.
So if it's just call these people the fucking frauds they are, well then guess what? We're going to call them the frauds that they are.
But don't be like hard on yourself in that way. I mean, Bernie Sanders did the same thing where he was trying to go there, and I thought at the point Rogan could be reasoned with in that way, and his audience, it was important to try to communicate with them. Like the thing is like, go on all these platforms. It's like why I went on Tim Pool, but I'm gonna go there in a way where I'm not gonna try to get invited back. Like I'm gonna go there and try to
adversarial.
Right. At this point, specifically with explicitly right-wing outlets, you got to go in there and you've got to eat their lunch, because the only time that leftists get reinvited to these places is if you validate everything that they say. Right. And then that creates a perverse incentive for those leftist communicators as well, because there's so much more money on that side of the equation. It is awash in money, and we're kind of scraping by on our end, because turns out like socialized healthcare and those kinds of policies, not necessarily the kind of thing that corporations want to fund in like a communications medium.
So what she's saying here, it's a bunch of bullshit. I think she's probably talking about the right-wing media. Most of the media is left-wing. Let's be honest. I'm pretty sure many of you have heard of Javier Milei, the president of Argentina. Before he got elected, have you ever heard anything about fucking Argentina unless you actually follow politics from South America? You didn't know shit, because most of the media, it's right-wing. That's why even with the prime minister from Italy, as soon as she got elected, everybody on left-wing media got in line telling them that she was part of the Mussolini family, part from the fascist, because they're all in line. They have all the funding, they have most of the major organizations, most of the teachers. What else do you want? Do you want to own the whole thing? No. And the problem is, the right wing has started to fight back. And I think that's a good thing, because a battle of ideas, when you have two different opinions colliding, that's the best thing we can have. Instead of just having either a liberal worldview or a conservative one. I'm down for the battle. I'm down to see for the disagreements. And people have to be fine with that. Hey, I'm going to a wedding of a friend of mine who has voted Democrat her entire life. I can care less. I don't have to agree with her politics just to be a friend of hers. It is the same way. Nobody, it is 100% one thing. And one thing, if you haven't learned it, at least I learned it myself, don't speak to people trying to convince them. Just state your position, say what you believe it, and if they don't believe it, that's fine. But you have the reasons why. At the end, politics, it's about personality. Whether you want to be nicer in certain things, whether you want more protection in certain things, and the extremes could be wrong. Too much rule, everything too soft. It's like the tyrant father, or the very soft, loving mother that allows you to do everything, can lead to bad consequences on both sides. So just be able to disagree. Stop thinking as you're just part of a box that you have to, either, if you voted for Donald Trump, you have to support everything that he does. You don't. Because you don't support everything that your mother does. You don't support everything that your brother does, because we're humans. And we should be able to think for ourselves. And I will leave it as that.